They brought the kid in on a Wednesday morning, just after our weekly operations sync. I was still nursing the last of my coffee when Greg, our GM, popped into my office with his usual thin smile and an unfamiliar shadow behind him. "Darren, this is Ethan," he said, clapping the young man on the shoulder like he was already family. "He's joining us for a short internship, just a few weeks of cross-training and exposure. He'll be shadowing you. No last name, no resume, just Ethan." I stood, offered a firm handshake, and got back a grip like a wet sponge. Ethan was maybe mid-20s, sharp haircut, expensive watch he probably didn't pay for himself. Said he was eager to learn and thrilled to be here. I'd been with the company 21 years that month, longer than Greg, longer than our current owners. Started when we were in a single rented suite with folding chairs and dial-up internet. Now, we occupied an entire floor downtown. I'd seen 4 restructures, 5 office moves, 3 full CRM overhauls. I built the vendor pipeline from scratch, negotiated our freight contracts, designed the cross-dock schedule that saved us $250,000 a year. My business card didn't say founder, but I'd been there longer than most of the people who called themselves that. Still, I nodded and said sure. I'd be happy to show Ethan the ropes. "That's what team players do, right?" Greg seemed relieved. "Appreciate it. He's smart, just green. Thought it'd be good for him to get some real-world exposure." Real-world exposure. I'd been giving the company exactly that for 2 decades. Through holiday inventory crunches, supplier bankruptcies, system outages at 2 a.m. But fine. I cleared a spot next to my desk and told Ethan to grab a chair. "We're going to start with the distribution model," I said. He nodded like he already knew what that meant. I figured it was just nerves. Still, something in his eyes caught me too confident for someone supposedly just trying to learn. But I pushed the thought aside. He was just a kid, probably told by some professor to take notes and ask questions. I didn't mind. I've always believed you can tell a lot about a company by how it treats the ones with no titles. That Wednesday, I treated Ethan the way I would have wanted to be treated at his age, with patience, clarity, and the assumption he'd earn his place. I had no idea he already had. Ethan showed up early the next day. Not early like green eagerness, early like he knew the office routine before anyone told him. He had a notebook, sure, but he rarely wrote anything down. Just watched, nodded, occasionally asked a question that felt more like a quiz than a curiosity. I walked him through our supplier intake model, showed him the vendor ledger system I'd helped code back when we couldn't afford off-the-shelf solutions. He already knew where the file structures lived. "Didn't IT just overhaul this last quarter?" he asked. I blinked. "Yeah. You read the update?" "No," he said quickly. "Just looked around yesterday." I moved on, trying not to overthink it. He shadowed me during vendor calls, sitting silently as I negotiated price locks and Q3 shipment forecasts. After one call, he said, "Wouldn't it make more sense to switch the Laredo lane to a bi-weekly schedule during off-peak?" I paused. It would, actually. But it wasn't the kind of thing a kid 2 days into an internship should have noticed. Still, I nodded. Good eye. He smiled. Like he already knew that too. I started wondering who this kid really was. Most interns I've seen spend their first week fumbling through logins and asking how to find the bathroom. Ethan had already memorized floor layouts, asked about audit protocols, and requested access to reports we didn't even train non-managers on. I flagged it once casually to Greg. "Kid's sharp," I said. "Almost too sharp. You sure he's never worked logistics before?" Greg just laughed. "Millennials, man. Born knowing code, raised on analytics." I didn't laugh back. I've mentored dozens over the years. Real talent. Real drive. Ethan was something else. He wasn't learning. He was collecting. Picking up keys, maps, blueprints, and I was handing them over. Not because I was naive, but because I'd been told this was training. A kid with promise. A chance to pass on what I knew. That's what you do after 20 years, right? You build a legacy. You share it. I didn't realize I wasn't training a successor. I was training a replacement. And he already knew the job wasn't meant to be mine much longer. 2 weeks into Ethan's internship, I noticed my calendar looked lighter than usual. At first, I chalked it up to the seasonal lull. February always ran a bit quieter between end-of-year reconciliation and Q2 prep. But then Monday came and went without the usual ops and finance sync. Tuesday, I saw a meeting on the boardroom screen: quarterly planning. Strategic Ops Inputand. My name wasn't on the list. I used to run that meeting. Now, I wasn't even invited. I stopped by Jenna's desk in admin. Hey, was that ops planning this morning? She looked up, clearly uncomfortable. Yeah. I think Greg wanted a smaller group this time. Just top-level stuff. I nodded, said thanks, walked away. I'd been top-level since dial-up. I started watching more closely. A few key emails about freight realignment never hit my inbox. I checked with Jeremy in logistic. She assumed I'd been looped in. I hadn't. The forwarding trail showed my name removed from the distro list. Must have been a system glitch, he said. But systems don't accidentally remove one name out of 20. Then came the project shifts. Work I'd spearheaded for years, the quarterly vendor review, contract audits, tech integration pilots, suddenly reassigned. The email phrasing was always the same. We're adjusting ownership for bandwidth reasons. Bandwidth. Like I was the one slowing things down. One of the projects was handed to Ethan. No announcement, no heads up. I found out when I saw his initials in the collaboration files. He didn't even mention it. Just smiled at me that morning, like nothing had changed. Maybe for him, nothing had. I tried to stay neutral, professional. 20 years teaches you how to play the long game. I still showed up early, answered every email, handled every fire quietly. But the changes weren't random. They were surgical. Like someone was slowly dismantling my authority piece by piece while smiling to my face. I mentioned it casually to Greg in the elevator one morning. Saw Ethan got assigned the pilot project. Thought I was still listed as lead. He smiled thinly. Thought you could use the break. You've earned it. That was the moment I knew. Something was happening behind the glass walls of the executive suite. And it wasn't a glitch. It was a phase-out. I just didn't know how far along they were. Greg called me into his office on a Thursday morning. Same leather chairs. Same fake enthusiasm. Darren, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I've been thinking about your future here. My stomach twisted. Those words never come without strings. You've been the backbone of this place. And with all the changes coming, I want to make sure your role evolves accordingly. I nodded slowly. Go on. We're considering creating a director of operations role. More strategic, less day-to-day grind. Something at your level. He paused like he wanted applause. I just watched him. He continued. HR will probably ask for some internal paperwork, updated resume, skills alignment, that sort of thing. Don't overthink it. Just formality. Formally, I smiled. But inside, something soured. I didn't need to submit a resume. My resume was the building. My resume was the vendor list, the freight playbook, the 3-ring binder in the back office titled Darren's Rules that new hires still used. Still, I played along, said thanks, said it sounded exciting, walked back to my desk and opened the HR portal with a heavy hand. Ethan passed by not 10 minutes later, giving me a nod and a "Morning, sir," like we were in the Navy. How's the internship going? I asked. Learning a ton, he said. Appreciate all the guidance. I almost asked him what he was really doing there. Almost asked him whose idea it was to reassign my projects. But I didn't. Not yet. I still had to believe Greg meant what he said. That afternoon, I ran into Sheila from HR in the break room. She kept her tone chipper but off-key. Hey Darren, just a reminder, we'll need your resume by Friday. And your professional development form. Don't want you to miss the window. For the promotion? I asked. Uh-huh. Promotion consideration. Consideration. Not offer. Not recommendation. Just possibility. It all felt like a dress rehearsal. I went back to my desk, opened the document they'd sent, and stared at the field that said, "List your most recent achievements." I didn't even know where to begin. I'd stopped documenting wins a decade ago. No one ever asked before. That night, I told my wife something I hadn't said in years. "I think something's off at work." She looked at me quietly over dinner and said, "Then maybe it's time to find out what." The week dragged longer than usual, every day a parade of spreadsheets, vendor calls, and software walkthroughs. Ethan stayed too close, sometimes shovering beside me like a second monitor. I walked him through our entire logistics software suite. Not just how it worked, but why it was built that way. Explained the cascading logic behind the allocation matrix, the exceptions in our routing algorithms, the manual override system I'd coded myself back when IT couldn't keep up with ops needs. "This isn't something you'll find in a manual," I told him Thursday afternoon, guiding him through a nested report template I built during a now defunct ERP migration. He nodded, eyes glued to the screen, tracking every keystroke. Most people would get lost 5 clicks in. He didn't. That should have told me something. But it didn't. Not yet. Friday wrapped up slow and steady. No fires to put out. No red flags. Just quiet. Ethan lingered as I packed up. "Thanks for everything this week," he said. "I think I've got it now." He meant the software, I assumed. Maybe more. I clapped him on the shoulder, told him he'd done well, and meant it. As odd as the whole setup had been, I figured maybe Greg had just overhyped the internship. Maybe Ethan really was just an ambitious kid, and I'd helped launch him on the right foot. That's what we're supposed to do, isn't it? Pass the torch. Train the next in line. I took the long way home, windows down, the March air still holding on to winter's edge. My wife had chili on the stove. We sat on the porch that evening. The kind of quiet that only comes after a full week well spent. "You look tired," she said. I smiled, leaned back. "Taught the intern everything but my social security number." She laughed. "You're too generous." I shrugged. "Someone taught me once. It's just paying it forward." I didn't know, as I sat there with a belly full of chili and the porch light flickering against dusk, that the very next time I walked through the doors of that building would be the last. I didn't know I'd already trained my replacement. That torch I'd passed? It wasn't meant for legacy. It was meant for erasure. Greg's voice over the intercom was unusually flat. "Darren, can you come to my office? Bring your laptop." I glanced at the clock. 2 a.m. Monday. The air was thick with that stale, weekend office scent. Filtered air, burnt coffee, something faintly synthetic. I grabbed my laptop, the cord still tangled, and walked the long corridor past rows of empty chairs. HR's Vanessa was already seated in Greg's office when I arrived. Her smile was brittle, like she'd practiced it in a mirror. Greg didn't even pretend. "Darren, I'll get right to it," he said, looking everywhere but at me. "We've made the decision to eliminate your role. It's effective immediately." The words dropped like cold metal. No explanation. No thanks. Just elimination. I blinked. "Effective immediately?" Vanessa nodded. "You'll have 30 minutes to collect your personal items. Your access is already being deactivated." "What about transition support?" I asked. My voice was calm, mechanical. "After 22 years, you're just cutting it off?" Greg cleared his throat. "This wasn't personal. It's a structural decision. Efficiency realignment. That corporate sludge again." I looked at the laptop in my hands. My hands. But not mine anymore. I set it on the table. "You don't want a debrief? Knowledge transfer?" "That won't be necessary," he said quickly. Which meant only one thing. Someone already had everything they needed. Someone like Ethan. I stood slowly. Nodded once. No anger. No scene. Just the quiet unraveling of 2 decades of loyalty in a 5-minute meeting. Vanessa gestured toward the door. "Security will walk you out after you've packed." The box they gave me was small, too small for 22 years. I placed my coffee mug inside, the one my daughter gave me when she was 8, a family photo. The plastic cactus I'd never watered. As I walked toward the exit, I saw Ethan in my old seat, logged in, already typing. He looked up, met my eyes, then quickly looked back down. I didn't stop walking. There was nothing left to say. I handed in my badge at the security desk. It had been reprinted so many times, the barcode was nearly worn smooth. As the glass doors closed behind me, the March wind hit harder than it should have. I stood on the curb. The building I helped build now, just another silhouette behind me. 22 years. Gone by 9:10 a.m. on a Monday. The thing about being blindsided is that the blow doesn't register right away. You feel the impact, sure, but the pain arrives later, quiet and slow, like a fog rolling in. I stood on the curb outside the building, still gripping the small box they gave me. When I looked back through the glass wall of the lobby, Ethan was at my desk. My chair, my monitors, my nameplate was gone. In its place, a new one, a temporary, printed on copier paper, slid into the holder like it belonged there. I watched as he adjusted the keyboard, logged into the system without hesitation. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable. Then Vanessa passed behind him, a manila folder in her hand. She turned slightly toward the reception desk, and for the briefest moment, I saw the name on the label in bold print, Ethan Monroe. Monroe, Greg's last name. I blinked. Once. Twice. And it clicked. All of it. The quiet reassignments. The missing emails. The sudden promotion consideration. And HR's request for a resume I never needed before. This hadn't been a restructuring. This had been a replacement plan. A swap. I'd trained my own successor without knowing I was the one being succeeded. I turned away from the glass, my heart steady but my thoughts running loud. It wasn't just betrayal, it was blood. Greg hadn't hired a promising intern. He'd installed his nephew, groomed him, slotted him into my job like it was always meant to be his. And he'd let me walk him through every system, every process, every workaround I'd developed across 2 decades, all while smiling to my face. I should have seen it. Maybe I did. But like any loyal employee, I wanted to believe the best of the people I'd served under. I wanted to believe I mattered. That's the part that stings, the way I mistook grooming a replacement for mentoring the next generation. I'd been replaced before I was ever let go. And the man who did it had shaken my hand just a few days ago and called me a cornerstone. Funny how fast cornerstones become debris when you're remodeling the house. I didn't say goodbye. There was no announcement, no awkward farewell card passed around the break room. Just me, a box of personal items, and the echo of quiet footsteps as I walked the length of the office one final time. Ethan didn't look up when I passed him. He stared at his screen like it held the secrets of the universe, or maybe just the guilt he didn't want to face. His shoulders stiffened when he saw me in his peripheral vision, but he never turned. I didn't stop. What was there to say? That I'd trained him well? That he was sitting in a chair he hadn't earned? That loyalty doesn't come with a salary. And betrayal doesn't always need a knife. No. That would have given him something: closure, clarity, a response. I didn't owe him any of that. The office was quieter than usual. Maybe people knew. Maybe they didn't. Some glanced up as I passed, then quickly back down to their screens. That's the etiquette of corporate exits: pretend you didn't see it, as if acknowledging it makes it contagious. The only one who broke the pattern was Carlos, the janitor. He'd been there nearly as long as I had, always working nights, always humming the same soft tune under his breath as he mopped the tile floors. We crossed paths by the elevator. He looked down at my box, then up at me, his brow furrowed. "You leaving?" I nodded. "They say I'm no longer essential." Carlos's face tightened. He glanced back toward the office floor, then leaned in slightly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "You deserved better, man. Everyone knows it." I swallowed hard. That was the only goodbye I got, and the only one I needed. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside. As the doors slid shut, I caught one last glimpse of my old office. Ethan still hadn't looked up. It was like I'd never been there at all. But I had. For 22 years. My fingerprints were on every process, every protocol, every corner of that building. They could erase my name. They couldn't erase my work. And one day, when things broke and no one knew how to fix them, they'd remember. By then, I'd be long gone. That night, I sat in my garage with the box still in my hands, the porch light casting long shadows on the concrete floor. I didn't go inside right away. My wife had already texted, "Everything okay?" And I'd replied with 3 words, "We'll talk later." I needed space to process what had just happened. 22 years. Not just a job. Not even a career a life. I'd missed birthdays and barbecues for last-minute shipment crises. Spent Christmas Eve in server rooms when the freight portal crashed in 2013. Sat alone in that office more nights than I could count, watching the city lights blink through the windows while I rebuilt what someone else had broken. In 2017, a ransomware attack hit our finance servers. Everyone panicked. It froze. I was the one who isolated the breach, restored the backups, and got us running within 36 hours. The board never heard about it. Greg took the credit. He brought me a bottle of whiskey a week later and said, "Couldn't have done it without you." I never opened it. I remember the time he approved a vendor deal that violated our conflict of interest clause. Signed off on it himself, then tried to pin it on our junior buyer. I found the paper trail, cleaned it up quietly, and convinced the vendor to renegotiate. Greg thanked me with a gift card to a steakhouse and a pat on the back, like I was some overpaid concierge. I never told anyone. Loyalty, I thought, was about protecting the team even when they didn't protect you. Sitting in the garage, I realized I'd been playing by a rulebook no one else followed. Loyalty wasn't a value in that building, it was a convenience. Something they leaned on until it became too expensive. I kept thinking, how long had this been in motion? Did they start planning the moment Ethan was hired? Or had they always known he'd take my place? Was every question he asked just another checkbox in a transition plan? Every answer I gave, another nail in my own coffin? I stared at the cactus in the box, somehow still alive after all these years. "You should have died years ago," I muttered. But maybe that's the thing. Some things survive even when they're forgotten, and some people don't stay gone. Especially when they remember what everyone else forgot. I'd almost forgotten about the drive. It sat in the bottom drawer of an old file cabinet in my home office, beneath outdated invoices and a half-used box of branded pens from a trade show in Dallas. A slim black external hard drive. No labels. No passwords. Just a relic from a different era. I plugged it in and watched the folders populate across my screen. The titles came back to me instantly. Vendor Contracts 2010, 2019, Audit Trail Logs, Exec Email Snapshots, Consultant Docs. I hadn't looked at it in years, not since Greg pulled me into his office back in 2015 and said, "Darren, we've got some vendor misclassification issues. Legal's aware, but I need you to quietly keep records. Just in case. Just in case." That was his phrase. Meant, do the dirty work. Don't ask questions. And I didn't. I built a private archive. Not for leverage, not even for protection. Just because I believed someone needed to keep the company honest even when leadership didn't. Inside the folders were everything they'd forgotten I had. Emails approving the use of short-term contract labor for logistics during peak seasons, workers deliberately classified as independent to avoid taxes, overtime, and benefits. Internal memos from Greg to HR using terms like gray zone and creative structuring. Spreadsheets showing payment cycles broken into subcontracts to stay under audit thresholds. And it wasn't just the tax games. There were NDAs from terminated employees with hush money baked into severance packages. One of them involved a harassment complaint that never made it to legal. I'd flagged it to Greg once. He told me it had been handled internally. That same month, he got a performance bonus for lowering turnover. I clicked through the folders, each document a quiet indictment. They thought they could erase me and keep the house standing. They forgot who wired the walls, who labeled the circuits, who kept every copy of the blueprint. I wasn't just a cog in the machine. I was the guy who made sure the machine didn't explode. And now that I was gone, there was no one left to keep it running quietly. No one left to keep their secrets quiet either. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. The kind of hour when decisions get made in silence. I clicked open a blank email draft. No rush. But the next move was mine. And I had all the pieces. By Tuesday morning, I'd assembled everything into a clean, digestible report. Facts only. No bitterness. No rants. Just time-stamped emails, payroll records, tax filing anomalies, and a direct line from Greg Monroe to vendor fraud, misclassification schemes, and one very questionable internship hire. I kept it clinical, the kind of packet an auditor would salivate over. I uploaded the files to a secure encrypted drive I controlled. Then I created a fresh email account burner. Credentials, untraceable. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I sent the message. Subject line: urgent. Internal ethics and compliance violation. Evidence attached. Recipients: every member of the board of directors. 2 addresses listed under legal at domains, and 1 personal email belonging to the company's external compliance officer, someone I'd worked with during the 2017 ransomware breach. I didn't include my name. Didn't need to. The evidence spoke loud enough. Inside the body of the email, I wrote, "This submission includes documentation of widespread ethics violations, including but not limited to tax evasion via misclassified labor, falsified contractor invoices, and a conflict of interest surrounding the hiring and placement of Ethan Monroe. The documents are authenticated. Backups exist. Review is advised before approving any executive bonuses or restructuring. Concerned party." I stared at the screen for a long moment before hitting send. Not because I doubted myself, but because this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about accountability. The kind no exit interview ever captures. The kind that doesn't knock before it enters. I clicked send, watched it disappear into the ether. Then I shut my laptop, leaned back in the chair, and waited. The machine I'd helped build was about to turn on its architects. I knew the gears. I knew the timing. By lunch, the right people would have seen it. By close of business, the walls would start to creak. Greg forgot one very important thing in his chess game. I was the one who drew the board. By Wednesday morning, the emails started coming, not official ones, personal ones. The kind people send when they're trying to get ahead of a fire they can smell but can't see. The first came from Vanessa in HR, subject line: requesting clarification, off the record. The body was short. "Darren, if you have time, I'd appreciate a quick chat. Not in any official capacity. Just wanted to understand some things better." Understand. That word again. Used when people are about to realize the system isn't as stable as they thought. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The board had received everything. My read receipts showed nearly every member had opened the attachments within the first 3 hours. 2 of them downloaded the files. 1 clicked the embedded metadata index I created to cross-reference the fake invoices. No one replied. That was expected. Silence isn't always absence, it's containment. That afternoon, I heard from a friend still working inside. A whisper through text. "What's going on?" Greg just got pulled into a closed-door board session, looked pale. At 4:47 p.m., the company's internal announcement went out. My friend forwarded me the email. Effective immediately. Gregory Monroe is on administrative leave pending an internal review. Day-to-day operations will be overseen by our interim GM. All inquiries are to be directed to the compliance team. No explanation. No thank you for your service. Just a clean removal, quiet and surgical, the same way they tried to erase me. Greg had walked me out without a warning. Now the building was walking him out without a window to climb back in. I pictured him packing his things into the same kind of cardboard box I carried just a week earlier. Only this time, the people watching wouldn't be avoiding eye contact. They'd be taking notes. And Ethan? I hadn't heard anything yet, but I had a feeling his name would come up in the second wave. Because once a company starts pulling at the wrong thread, they rarely stop at the first unraveling. The email came late Friday evening, time-stamped 6:50, 2 p.m. Just late enough to be convenient, just early enough to be documented. Subject: Consulting Opportunity, Urgent Support Request. Vanessa again. I opened it slowly, already knowing what it would say before I read a single word. Hi Darren. In light of recent events and ongoing leadership restructuring, the board is requesting short-term consulting support to ensure operational continuity. Your historical knowledge of our logistics, systems, and vendor frameworks would be invaluable during this transitional period. We would like to formally offer you a temporary consulting contract with competitive compensation to assist the interim team. Please let us know your interest and availability at your earliest convenience. Invaluable. That word carried weight now. A week ago I was expendable, a line item to be trimmed. Now I was critical. Not because they missed me, because they were exposed. Because I'd left holes in their foundation they didn't know existed until the walls started leaning. I stared at the message, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence answer first. Then I clicked. Reply. Vanessa, thank you for the offer. I'm going to decline. You already replaced me, remember? Darren. That was it. No venom. No heat. Just a reminder. A single sentence that carried the full weight of 22 years. They wanted my knowledge, my files, my mind after deciding they didn't want me. I wasn't going to lend them a blueprint for a building they tried to lock me out of. I hit send, closed the laptop, stepped outside into the cool air. For the first time in days, I didn't feel angry, or even hurt. I just felt clear. The kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop waiting to be seen by people who were never looking in the first place. They hadn't given me closure. I'd built it myself. Monday morning, my phone rang just after 9 a.m. Unknown number, local area code. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, another ring, same number. I picked up. Darren, this is Mel Carter, VP Ops at Westcor. I remembered her. Sharp, no, nonsense. We'd met once at a supply chain summit in Denver. She'd offered me a position 2 years ago. I turned it down out of loyalty. We heard about what happened over at Meridian, she said. Word gets around. Some of it. Impressive. I said nothing. She continued. Here's the deal. We want you. No red tape. No politics. No executive nephews with hidden job titles. Just a team that needs someone who knows how to keep the wheels turning. I let out the smallest breath of a laugh. You offering me a job based on a whistleblower report? I'm offering you a job because I read between the lines, and because I've seen how your systems held together under stress. Your reputation's earned. Your exit just confirmed it. What's the role? Director of Ops. Full autonomy. Report to me. Not to a ladder of middlemen. Salaries higher than what you made. Hours are yours to shape. I want results, not FaceTime. You interested? I didn't answer right away. I thought about Ethan sitting in my old chair, about Greg being escorted out with a lawyer instead of a handshake, about the cardboard box in my garage. Then I thought about what it would feel like to walk into a building where I wasn't a placeholder for someone else's plan. Yeah, I said. I think I'm interested. Good, Mel replied. We'll send the formal offer by noon. Take your time, but not too much. We hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in hand, the early sunlight cutting through the blinds across the tile. For the first time in years, I wasn't walking into someone else's story. I was starting my own. It was a warm Thursday afternoon when I found myself walking past the old building. Not by design. Just one of those moments when the world loops back on itself. The sun glinted off the glass facade like it always had, casting long reflections across the sidewalk. The same security guard was at the front desk, though he didn't see me. Or maybe he did, and chose not to look too long. I didn't stop walking, just slowed enough to take it in. The company name on the sign out front had been restyled, new font, new slogan, cosmetic changes, surface polish to hide what was quietly rotting underneath. I already knew Greg was gone. Not just on leave, but under active federal audit. Financial misconduct, vendor fraud, conflict of interest. Once the board saw the full report, they'd turned faster than I expected. Self-preservation does that. Last I heard, Greg had lawyered up and retreated to some cabin out of state. He hadn't made a statement. There was nothing left to say. And Ethan? He disappeared not long after. My source inside HR said his internship ended abruptly. No fanfare. No reassignment. Just gone. Probably back to whichever school or startup or family trust he crawled out of. Whatever future Greg had promised him dissolved the second the board smelled liability. Loyalty isn't something you inherit. It's something you prove. He never stood a chance. I stopped at the intersection across from the building, watching employees trickle out for late lunch breaks. Most of them wouldn't recognize me now. Maybe a few would. A head tilt here, a second glance there. But no one crossed the street. That was fine. I didn't need applause. I didn't need acknowledgement. I had something better. Clarity. For 22 years, I held that place together not for glory, not for power, but because it mattered to me. And when they decided I didn't matter to them, I walked away with my spine intact. With every email, every audit trail, every proof of decision archived and ready. Not for revenge but for truth. They taught me that. Some things you only learn by being underestimated. I turned the corner. The sun on my back. The noise of the city folding behind me. A new job waited. A new team. A company that called me by name, not title. I didn't look back again. Didn't need to. That chapter was closed. And I was already writing the next one. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.